morning and welcome. It's 8:07. You're tuned to the Bob Rose Show along with Greg Cassidy. Thank you for tuning in. Time check brought to you by Hayes Jewelers, where the answer is always yes. And if he hasn't talked her ear off already, Greg,
we had a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I'd like to a chance to talk to our Congresswoman Kat Cammack. Good morning, Kat. How are you?
Hey, fellas. Good morning. How are you doing?
Fantastic. It is good to talk to you. And I know you have to be feeling pretty good, at least about one thing, and that is Virginia.
Oh, my gosh. Yes. I tell you, the mood up here in Washington, D.C. has changed dramatically. A good friend of mine, Byron Donald, who's a congressman from South Florida, good conservative guy. He and I, along with some of our other freshman colleagues, went down and celebrated with Glenn Youngkin the other night. Historic win, not just for turning Virginia red, but electing a total rock star in their lieutenant governor, Winsome Sears, black woman, first elected to, she's the first black woman elected to statewide office. Not that her race matters, but the fact that she walks up there and says, I'm a Marine, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a business owner, and we are going to do things differently. She's a true American, great American story. And I got to tell you, walking around up here yesterday, my Democrat colleagues are feeling pretty low. And we saw what was really shocking for them. They thought they were going to run away with this. This is the beginning of the end for the ultra-liberal progressive movement. But true to style, Nancy Pelosi says today she's going to force a vote. And the American people, who for calling, for everything that they have done, for all the screaming and pushing that we've been doing up here, we've denied her a vote for over 8 weeks. And today she thinks this is it. She says, you know what, we're going to push forward no matter what, and we're going to deny her one more time.
That's good news. And I'm going to ask you about that in just a minute. But also, the governor race, what a great story. Glenn Youngkin, political newcomer. He wins. Biden carried that state by 10 points against Donald Trump. So this is quite a turnaround, especially when you consider Terry McAuliffe he is deep inside the Democrat operation, tied in with the Clintons and everything else. To beat that guy in Virginia is huge. But then you turn to the lieutenant governor's race, which, by the way, is not talked about on any of the mainstream media at all. MSNBC, they had to give those people, put them on life support because they had such a meltdown over Youngkin winning that they couldn't bear to talk about a woman of color running and as a Republican, because how do they explain the narrative that we're all white dog whistling, white supremacists, but yet we voted for a black lieutenant governor? How do they, I wonder how they exactly, figure that out to share with their followers.
It was, and still continues to be, to the point of humorous, that they cannot get out of their own way. When they have nothing left, they immediately revert to the race card. And Joy Reid on MSNBC made a statement about the Virginia election saying that this is white nationalism, that this was a bunch of racists getting together, and that Republicans, and I quote, Republicans are the biggest danger to our national security. And a reporter asked me yesterday what I thought about that. And I said, that's an asinine statement that in itself is dangerous. That's what's dangerous. The constant division, the constant pitting of Americans against each other. This race was not about racial issues. This was about issues at the kitchen table. This was a bunch of people who had come together who said, enough is enough. You've got the AG and school boards saying that moms and dads are racist, that they're domestic terrorists. You've got a governor's candidate saying that we need less white teachers. When you talk to people in Virginia about why they turned out, it was because they were scared to death of the government overreach. It was truly all about the conversations around the kitchen table that drove them to the polls. And this had nothing to do with the so-called social justice warrior movement. They rejected that wholeheartedly. You look at Minneapolis. They voted to save their police department. You see around the country, There were initiatives on the ballot to defund police. They were rejected. In Seattle, they actually voted to increase funding for police. I mean, the tide is starting to turn because people are waking up saying, oh, my God, we actually slid down this path for about 11 months, and it's scary as hell.
Well, you know who else? You know who else woke up? The mama bears, or as someone want to call them, soccer moms. I call them mama bears because you mess with the kids, you mess with them, and they're not going to, they'll take that personally, and they'll go to the ballot box and they'll vote. Some of these same ones might have been turned off by using Twitter too much by Donald Trump. But you know what? The issues override the personalities, and the content of what this Republican Youngkin and others are offering, I think that's resonated with these, I call them soccer moms, or I call them, mama bears. But it's about the family. The family's being attacked by Democrat policies. They're being attacked. Gasoline prices, all the cost of living going up, continually going up. And then they're worried about teaching CRT in schools when our kids are falling behind the rest of the world in some of these critical skill areas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, put yourself in the shoes of a mom in Virginia today. She's now homeschooling her kid because the schools are shut down. She's had a look at the curriculum that they've been sending home over the last year. It's frightening. They're trying to teach her child that her kid is less than because of the color of their skin. And then, she's trying to do extracurricular stuff, and you can't get cleats, you can't get jerseys. You're driving to the gas station, you're paying 300% more at some places. You go to the grocery store, you're paying more in the grocery store. People are out of work. You're waiting in lines. The supply chain is all messed up. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The conversations around the kitchen table, heck, I know me and Matt, we have had them. Matt does a lot of the grocery shopping in our household because I'm always
right. You're on the run, yeah.
And he calls me and he's like, you wouldn't believe what I'm paying for this. I mean, families are sick and tired of the government overreach. We don't need bureaucrats in Washington telling us how to live our lives. Leave us alone. Stick to your day job and stay out of the social stuff. We just need to get back to the basics, the common sense. And that's what we've been talking about. But then you have people like Nancy Pelosi and Biden who say that the country was never great, that we need to completely reform where we're headed. And they're going to force a vote to try to bankrupt our country and put the final nail in the coffin. And we have to stop it. And that starts today.
And I understand you are going to stop it. I understand you had a meeting with some of the folks, Breitbart, and you and some other Republicans with Breitbart, and you said Biden's Build Back Better agenda is dead, and that might even come to a head today. So is all that correct, and you still think you guys can squash it?
I do, because, if you look at Abigail Spanberger, she's a so-called moderate Democrat. Of course, what does that mean these days? She's a Virginia representative. In 2020, Biden won her district by 12 points. Youngkin won her district by 16. Wow. If the election were held and she were on the ballot, she would have lost handedly. People like her, Gottheimer, Stephanie Murphy in Florida, others that are in the so-called moderate swing seats, they are scared to death, absolutely petrified. And for Nancy Pelosi to be as tone-deaf and arrogant as she is to force this vote, the moderates are going to stand up, scream, and shout. And quite frankly, we're at the point where until we know, and I've said this all along, until we know not just what the final cost is, because this notion of we have to pass it to see what's in it, that's asinine in itself. I want to see a provision tucked in, and we're going to work on this, a provision of what every single bill costs every single taxpayer in America. If you're paying taxes in America, you should know what every single bill is going to cost you personally as an individual. And I think if Americans knew that about this bill, they would be screaming at the top of their lungs. And they've already spoken in Virginia. They're speaking out in New Jersey. This whole agenda is dead as far as I'm concerned, and we're going to make sure it stays that way.
Well, keep in touch. We hope that you're right. That answers the question an earlier caller had about, cost per household with these bills. You're addressing that, so that worked out perfectly. And
awesome.
We can say what we always say, Kat, keep fighting the good fight. Congresswoman Kat Cammack, once again, letting us know what's going on in Washington, what's really going on in Washington. We appreciate it.
Hey, Okay, thanks, Bob. Thanks, Ray.
All right, stay safe.